I think it is entirely possible to welcome and celebrate legal immigrants and also to defend rule of law and also to oppose amnesty. We should secure the borders. We should not embrace amnesty, but we should celebrate and streamline legal immigration.
Celebrate and streamline legal immigration. Senator Ted Cruz at the South Carolina Freedom Summit over the weekend. What exactly did he mean by those comments? It's a great place to start our roundtable discussion this hour. Joining us is senior editor at Stream.com, Rachel Alexander, and regular contributor to this program, Stephen Cobb, former general counsel to the Democratic Party of Virginia. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for having us.
All right, Rachel, let's start with you. We heard from Senator Cruz saying that he believes it is possible to find a balance with legal immigration rather than resorting to amnesty, as some would describe it. Did you think he struck a good middle ground on the topic in South Carolina over the weekend?
Absolutely. It was brilliant. He's not saying anything different that conservatives haven't been saying for the last 10 to 20 years. That balance that he brought across is going to appeal to the conservative base. Everyone's going to agree with him. And, you know, the left can make as much of it as they want. Oh, he's becoming soft on immigration. No, he's not. He basically said that he thinks that we should celebrate legal immigration.
It did not sound soft to me. Stephen, let me ask you this question, too, because Ted Cruz, I think, has been underestimated on the campaign trail by a lot of folks on the left. What did you think about his comments?
Well, I think on the campaign trail, he's going to do well for himself. He's very poised. He's very comfortable speaking in front of large groups, and he certainly knows how to check the boxes to make sure he burnishes his conservative bona fides. But on the immigration issue, I mean, he really didn't say anything. We should be happy for those who are coming here legally, full stop, and doesn't really elaborate on that at all. There was a very comprehensive bipartisan push in the United States Senate on immigration reform, and Senator Cruz was nowhere to be found. And it's interesting because at the end of that speech that he gave, he talks about comparing himself to the other candidates, and he poses these rhetorical questions and asking where people were on the important fights. And so when you juxtapose that to his own speech and his own positions, where has he been on making sure we have good, comprehensive immigration reform? And where was he in the bipartisan coalition that passed that legislation in the United States Senate?
All right, fair point, but we got some other stuff to talk about, so let's move on to our next topic.
Rachel, I want to ask you, who do you think came out on top after this weekend summit?
You know, it looks like Scott Walker did. He really rallied the base, talking about how he took on the unions. He probably had one of the longer speeches. He had a lot of applause. You know, he hasn't even announced yet, but people are just anticipating him jumping into the race. They know he's a governor. He's going to have a really good shot since a lot of presidents come from governors. I think he pretty much came out on top.
All right, Scott Walker. Stephen, I don't know if you followed it. You might not be paying as close attention to this because we now have a race for Democrats here, but what were your thoughts? Scott Walker, according to Rachel, was the big winner this weekend, and this is kind of a bellwether type of meeting because South Carolina, one of those early primary states.
I think the Democratic Party came out on top. So long as Republican candidates are talking about things like repealing Obamacare, ignoring the fact that we've had consistent job growth for 6 years, we're going to have a very strong message going into 2016 about actual achievement and where that vision is going for the future.
So, Stephen, then who would you say is the biggest threat then?
I think that's far too early to tell. Really, it's going to take one of these folks to try and coalesce enough support from the Republican right to really try and substantiate themselves as the presumptive frontrunner.
Right.
I think so long as Jeb Bush is staying out of the fray and collecting lots of money, he still remains the person to beat on the right.
No, that's how that looks from the left because he's talking about a lot of things, but a lot of folks say he's running a general election campaign in the primary. But let's take a look at something else that was said over the weekend. A woman in the crowd was participating in a panel discussion with Frank Lentz, the pollster here, and this is what she had to say at the summit. Let's take a listen.
One man, one vote. People are coming in this country across the borders like rats and roaches in the woodpile. We've got...
Now, I want to focus not necessarily on what that woman said, but the crowd's reaction to that. What do you think, Rachel? I mean, there is this perception of coming from folks like Stephen towards the right that the right is not sensitive to these issues of immigration. Does that help their cause?
Well, here's the problem with that gotcha moment, and it seems like so much of politics is all about these gotcha moments. You know, I've been in audiences like that before, and you know what? You can't hear half of what people are saying. You know, you look at somebody, it sounds like they say something great, and you just start clapping with the crowd. I bet if you went and asked all those people after the meeting, you know, did you really agree with, you know, this language this woman used? Nobody in the entire crowd would agree with that. It's unfair, and she's, you know, just this little old lady, the mother of the guy who organized it. You know, for her to say something like that, she's not running for office.
All right, well,
Stephen, we want to get Stephen's reaction, but we're running out of time. We're going to ask both of you to stick around after the break.
And we're also going to talk about Michelle Obama and the trials and tribulations of being the first black First Lady. That'll be the second part of our roundtable discussion coming up right after the short commercial break. All right, welcome you back to the Newsmax Now Roundtable. Check back in with our panelists. Roundtable panelists. That's what I was
Monday.
Trying to say.
It just happens.
Rachel Alexander joining us as well as Stephen Cobb. And Stephen, we wanted to get you to react, not just to what the woman said there in that clip we played before the commercial break, but the crowd's response. Rachel says they weren't necessarily responding to what she said, maybe just an overall reaction of the crowd. What say you, sir?
Well, I think they were probably most definitely responding to her words. There was nothing else for them to respond to. It's easy, and my first reaction, like many people's, is anger, but once that subsides, it's really just sadness. It's sad that the speaker would categorize these immigrants with such derogatory terms, and it's sad to me that the audience there would laugh and clap and support that. You know, if we're going to have a serious conversation about immigration reform, we need to look at it seriously, and using, you know, derogatory remarks and name calling to talk about people who are trying to come to our country and trying to get to the freedom that we all appreciate in daily life. Name calling is not the way to start, and it certainly doesn't elevate that discussion.
Let's talk about another topic, things that are also igniting fire. First Lady Michelle Obama made a speech at Tuskegee. You're right. Tuskegee. Yes.
Institute.
It's that Monday thing, John.
It's Monday.
I swear to God, right?
Right.
Anyway, that happened Saturday, where she discussed the role of race in the media's treatment of her on the 2008 campaign trail. Here's what she had to say. I want to get your reaction.
But as potentially the first African-American First Lady, I was also the focus of another set of questions and speculations. Conversations sometimes rooted in the fears and misperceptions of others. Was I too loud or too angry or too emasculating?
Let's start with you, Rachel. Your thoughts.
Have undergone the exact same perception, and you know, she acts like it's a black thing. Well, all she and Obama do is talk about, you know, race, and they don't try to bring people together and be colorblind. And look at the way she talks about it. She's so arrogant, she's so rude. It's all about me, 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 me. I mean, she made this one quote at the end of that speech where she goes, "I had to ignore all the noise and be true to myself, and the rest would work itself out." I mean, why doesn't this woman go, you know, do charity work or do something kind and use her position for something good? But instead, it's all about poor me in this angry, bitter, vicious tone.
Stephen, is it me, 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 or is the First Lady just showing empathy and letting people know I've been in your shoes? Your thoughts?
I think it's clearly showing empathy. She was talking about a difficult time in her life and what she had to do to overcome it, and that is oftentimes a common theme that's used at graduation ceremonies and commencements, letting those graduates know that they're going to be tough times ahead, and when they look at it, that they too can overcome those obstacles and have the success in their future. And she was sharing what was clearly a very personal and trying moment for her in an attempt to relate to those students. I think she should be commended for sharing that, and she's proven herself to be an inspiration to many, young, old, and all across the spectrum, and I applaud her for her speech and her leadership.
All right, Stephen Cobb, former general counsel to the Democratic Party of Virginia, and Rachel Alexander, senior editor at stream.org. Thank you both for joining us here for this roundtable on this Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.